If you spent any time researching retirement, you've almost certainly come across the 4% rule. But what if I told you the 4% rule was actually something that was created 30 years ago when the world was very different? And if you were to follow that blindly now, you're either going to run out of money in your 70s or 80s, or have a massive pension pot when you die, which quite frankly is good use to nobody apart from your kids. So in this video, I'm going to show you exactly why the 4% rule is broken, how you can actually calculate a safe withdrawal rate for your personal situation, and come up with a number that's sustainable for you. But if you're new here, my name's Ben, I'm a chartered financial planner, and my aim is to help as many people as possible gain more clarity and confidence around their personal finances and their retirement plan. Okay, so let's actually start by looking at the 4% withdrawal rate and where that came from. So this is a rule that was invented about 35 years ago by a financial planner called William Bengen. He did loads of research into what a sustainable withdrawal rate was. Now, he based this on market data going back to 1926, and he effectively came up with the 4% rule. And that was on the basis that if you withdrew 4% of your pension each year, adjusted for inflation, you would not run out of money during the course of your retirement. Now, the problem with this is the fact that the world has changed a lot since then. People are living a lot longer than they were 35 years ago. So he based this on a 30-year retirement, whereas if you retire now at age 55, for example, you could have a 45-year retirement. The other thing this doesn't factor in is the fact that when you do retire, you are not likely to be spending the same amount year in, year out. So what I mean by that is in the early years of retirement, you're probably going to be spending a bit more whilst you're fit and healthy. Whereas in the later years of retirement, you're probably going to slow down and spend a bit less. So the 4% rule doesn't really factor this in. Now, the other thing this research was based on was a 50-50 portfolio. So that's 50% in bonds and 50% in equities. Now, if you're in a position where you're actually taking more risk than this and you've got a higher allocation to equities within your pension, what does that mean for the 4%? And the final point to make on the 4% rule is this is a worst case scenario. So effectively what he says was, what is the maximum I could draw and ensure I don't run out of money? Now, clearly, as I say, this is a worst case scenario, but we really want to be looking at, okay, well, not the worst case scenario, but the average. Okay, so on screen now, I've got a fictional example of someone that's age 60 with £750,000 in their pension. Now, they're invested in a balanced portfolio, and 4% of that balance is £30,000. And again, that £30,000 we're adjusting each year in line with inflation. Now, the number I want to draw your attention to here is the 92%. Now, what this means is that we have used historical market data to say, based on that 4% withdrawal rate, what are the chances of success? And effectively what that means is that over the last 100 years, in 92 of those years, that 4% withdrawal rate would have been sustainable. However, in 8 of those 100 years, you actually would have run out of money. So if you want to get that to 100%, what is the safe withdrawal rate that we could have used based on historical market data? And you can see here that this person would have been able to draw about £22,000 a year. And again, this is the worst case scenario. But you can see here that this is 2.9%. That's a long way from the 4% that's historically quoted. Now, this is based on this person having retired at the very worst point over the last 100 years. So on the flip side to that, if they're retired at the very best point, what could have they sustainably withdrawn for the remainder of their life? And you can see here the vast difference this makes, because they could have actually withdrawn £66,000 a year and actually not run out of money during retirement. And this is an 8.8% withdrawal rate, over double the 4%. So you can see here that when you retire can have a massive impact on how much you can actually withdraw and what the safe withdrawal rate actually is. Now, clearly this is such a wide range, and this is only based on one particular scenario. But there are so many levers that you can pull when it comes to retirement that can have a huge impact on how much you can actually withdraw. So let's look at those now. Okay, so the first scenario we're looking at is one where they actually retire 5 years earlier. So instead of retiring at age 65, they actually retire at age 60. And you can see here that the success rate here drops to 76% based on that same 4% withdrawal rate. And again, if we stress test this, we can see that if this person had retired at the very worst point over the last 100 years, they could have only sustainably withdrawn about £21,000 a year from that pension. Conversely, if they're retired at the very best point over the last 100 years, they could have withdrawn £63,000 a year from their pension and not run out of money throughout retirement. Now, the second thing that makes a huge difference is the risk you're taking within your pension, because over a 25 to 30 year retirement, your money is likely to stay invested within the stock market. So instead of looking at a 50-50 portfolio, let's look at a situation where you are in 100% equities. Now, clearly there is more risk involved in this, in that the value of your pension is going to fluctuate a lot more. But what does this mean for the sustainable withdrawal rate during your retirement? So you can see, based on the same 4% withdrawal rate, we've actually got a 94% success rate. Now, that's only up 2% from the 92% we modelled previously. But the big difference is the range. So if you remember from the original scenario, in the worst case scenario, i.e. if you retired at the very worst point over the last 100 years, you could have sustainably withdrawn 2.9% of the value of that pension each year. Now, if we actually look at a situation where you're 100% in equities, you might think, okay, well, I'm taking more risks, therefore, if I retired at the very worst point, surely I could withdraw less. But you can see here that the safe withdrawal rate was actually 3.3%. So this actually shows that although you are taking more risk within your pension, over a long retirement time horizon, even if you retired at the very worst point, you're actually still likely to be able to spend more than if you're in a 50-50 balanced portfolio. Now, the other thing to mention at this point is that if we're sticking with the same example of having a 100% equity portfolio, you can see that the average scenario over the last 100 years, if you were taking that 4% safe withdrawal rate, you would have actually had a pension pot at age 95 of about £1.6 million. Now, this is over double the amount you started with, and yes, this is the inflation adjusted figure. So in today's terms. So you can see here that if you were just drawing that 4% safe withdrawal rate, which a lot of people mention, you're actually going to end up in a position where later on in life, you're going to have a huge pension pot there, at which point, quite frankly, you're not really going to need to be spending that much money. Now, clearly this is great for your kids, grandkids, or whoever inherits your pension. But the point is, you can't just blindly follow that 4%, because it's either going to mean you run out of money a lot sooner than you think, or you could actually have a huge pension pot building up in the background, when in reality you could actually be spending a lot more and enjoying that now. Okay, so if 4% isn't the answer, then what is? Now, quite honestly, there isn't a universal answer because everyone's situation is different, and there are so many variables and factors that go into this. For some people, 3% might work, whereas for others, 5% might actually be sustainable. The other thing to say is that you can't just simply look at this once and say, I'm going to retire and spend 3% a year or 5% a year, because life changes and things get in the way. So this is something you need to be really reviewing every year, depending on how markets have done and your personal situation. Okay, now you might be thinking, am I actually on track to retire? So what I would suggest you do is check out my free retirement calculator, and you can find this in the description below. There's no catches here, no fees, no email required. Just simply click the link, it asks you 6 questions, and it will show you whether you are on track to retire when you want to. Now, based on the answers to that calculator, the chances are there are quite a few things you're missing that could easily gain you thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of pounds between now and when you retire. So what I do offer is a 90-day retirement accelerator. And again, you'll find the details to this as and when you complete the calculator. Anyway, hope you've enjoyed the video and I hope you got some value from it, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.